Yeah, how you doing, everybody? It's Wednesday. It's the 27th of October 2010, and it's early on in the morning. And before I start this little video, I just really want to thank everybody who responded and made comments over, the last couple of videos, in particular the last one. And I want to thank them all. And over the weekend I had an opportunity to sort of rethink what I'd said in the last video. So what I'm going to do is obviously we are in dreadful times from an economic point of view, and I suppose as many people as possible should weigh in, really, as to offer some sort of counter to the propaganda afforded by the mainstream media and by the state media, because all you're going to get out of that is going to be lies and just misleading information. It's going to go nowhere. Anyway, that's basically all I want to say. I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank in particular all the people that make comments all the time, because I know a lot of effort goes into some of those comments. Some of the comments are brilliant. I have to say that some of them are fantastic comments. And the other thing that I want to obviously thank is, I want to thank all the people who subscribe to this little channel. And the other thing is, just as an adjunct to that, I just want to get back to one basic, and I keep saying this, maybe I must have said it 10 times now. I'm not a member of any political party. I don't want you to join any political party. I'm not advocating any particular political stance. I have my own political views, alright? But I appreciate that there's lots of people out there who don't share those views. But I just want to clarify something. I think a lot of people looking at this, looking at me and hearing my accent and all that, they think that I'm some sort of a fellow traveller of the provisional IRA or provisional Sinn Féin or something like that. I'm not. I have nothing to do with those people. I don't want to have anything to do with those people. Those people are Republicans in ideology and fascist in methodology. I don't want to have anything to do with them. I'm a Republican, I'm a constitutionalist, I'm a Democrat. That's all you need to know. And I don't advocate violence. There's loads of people who don't agree with my political viewpoint out there, and I don't agree with theirs, but I'm not into killing them because they don't agree with my political viewpoint. So if anybody makes any little comments on my videos about killing people and taking and blowing people up or hanging people or any of that stuff, forget about it. Forget about it. We live in extraordinarily volatile times, and I lived through a civil war in the north of Ireland, and I don't wish that on anybody. I lived through the early part of it. I was forced to leave, but the bottom line about it, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And it's the road to perdition. It's the road to nowhere. Anyway, that's all I really want to say about that. What I wanted to, in this little video, I just want to talk about one thing. It happened over the weekend, and when it happened on Saturday, and then it was kind of repeated on Sunday, and it was to do with debt. And when it happened, I had to go away and had to think to myself, and I was just mulling over my head from a historical point of view. I just want to tell you a couple of things about debt. Up until the Reformation, there was only one dominant church within the whole Western world, and that was the Roman Catholic Church. And inside the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, there was a portion of it which was sacrosanct, and it related to the church and society outside, how the church sort of laid down its rigours and its laws in a social context. And one of the key elements of that was the concept of usury or indebtedness, all right, money lending, all right. And up until the beginnings of the 15th century, when the Renaissance started, so what you had the Catholic Church founded, they claim, at the time of Peter. Rome, you have the 1st century AD, you have and all those, the emperors, and embracing the whole Christian ethos, and from the beginnings of Christianity right up until the beginnings of the 15th century. Usury was a sacrosanct concept within the Roman Catholic Church and the Christian Church at large. It was an unforgivable sin. And if you committed usury, if you were an ordinary person and you involved yourself in money lending, you were guilty and you went to a priest, the priest could not forgive you that sin. Imagine that. The priest could not, it was called a reserved sin. So what you had to do was, you had to go to a prince of the church, you had to go to a bishop or above to get absolution. A priest did not have the right to forgive you that sin. And then what happened was, of course it's the old story, everything within the Roman Catholic Church is always the same way. It's all based on expediency. They have no basic fundamental beliefs at all. This thing which was at the core of Roman Catholic stroke Christian belief for 15 centuries was thrown out with baby with the bathwater. The moment they come under a real problem at the beginnings of the Renaissance, with the city-states, the Republican city-states in the north of Italy started to attack the Vatican State. And in order to defend itself, it had to raise money. So it took the most basic and the most, as I say, the most central, one of the most key elements, central elements of its whole teaching, and just threw it away because it suited them. And so it is. So we've arrived at the situation where now all of a sudden the whole world embraces the concept of debt. And what happened was, on Saturday I was out at a social do and I met a man at this social do. I wasn't invited to it. My wife gets invited to these things because she's a nice woman, unlike me. And I go along as a sort of a fellow traveller. I'm the driver and I go along. And anyway, cut a long story short, there was a taxi man there. And this man owns a small taxi company in the middle of Kildare. And he employs 3 people. And he seems to be a nice man. And he was talking about, a couple of weeks back, he collected some Americans up at the airport. And he was, so I'm in a group of men talking about this, do you understand? And I'm listening to this. And the man is telling the people that are all around me how amazed the Americans were, because the last time they were here, this group of Americans, was 20 years ago, and they couldn't believe how developed Ireland was, and all the roads and the motorways and the houses, and he was talking about this Celtic tiger we had. So I piped up and I said to him, I let him finish his little conversation, and I said to him, I hope you put those Americans right. What do you mean? He said. I said, I hope you pointed out to them the fallacy of their logic. There is no Celtic tiger. There never was a Celtic tiger. It's all an illusion. What do you mean? What do you mean? He said. I said it was all based on debt. It's all based on borrowings. I said, do you not understand the concept of a man who lives in a big house and has a car, a big fancy car? But in order to get it all, he's borrowed up to here, and you have a little man walking around the road who doesn't live in a big fancy house, but he has £100 under his mattress somewhere, or in a hole in the ground in his back garden. He has £100. Who's the wealthier man? At first glance, it would seem to be the man living in the big house. Socially, it would seem to be the man living in the big house. But he's up to here in debt. He's a monkey, a huge burden on his back. That's what indebtedness is. That's what our country's in. That's why we're bankrupt today. We're bankrupt today because we borrowed all this money. And all we did was, we either were given it by the European Central Bank to build up our infrastructure, but we didn't do that. All we did was gamble it on houses. Did you point that out to the Americans? No, of course not. Of course not. So I may as well let off an atomic bomb in the room. I swear. Because another part of the room had been talking about, because I overheard this in the corner of my hearing, as it were. And another part of the room had been talking about the price of houses. So I decided I'm going to fucking really set off an atomic bomb here. So I asked every one of them how much they paid for their houses. I said, can you tell me approximately? I don't want to know exactly. Can you tell me approximately how much you paid for your house? One of them said 300,000 euros. I said, no, you didn't. What do you mean? You know nothing about my business. I said, you're telling me that you paid £300,000, 300,000 euros for your house. Can I ask you something? Can I ask you something? Yeah. Did you buy it for cash? No, of course not. I bought it through a mortgage company. I bought it through a bank, actually. Yeah, I said, so you didn't pay £300,000 euros for your house. When you have paid for that house after 20, 25 years, you will have paid 750,000 euros, £750,000. That is the reality. That's why we're in this situation that we're in today. Nobody buys anything anymore. It's all done on borrowed money. It's all done through debt. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you what happened. My wife had to come over and basically take me out of the company because they'd really started me off on the only point I'm trying to make is we have embraced debt as if debt is a natural part of the social milieu of society. The point I'm trying to make is for 1,500 years it was an anathema. People who were engaged in money lending, either as the money lender or the money borrower, were participants in a reserved sin within the Christian ethos, within the Catholic Church. Today the Catholic Church has its own bank. The Vatican Bank, the IOR, it lends out fucking money right, left and centre to the international markets. The Pope has his own personal advisor, Sir Peter Sutherland, to help him make more money through money lending. So this Pope knows more than all the popes that went before him from the friggin' beginning of Peter right up to the 15th century. I tell you, the more you think about it, you want to get sick, you want to throw up. So that's the problem. People say, what's the problem with our modern world? That's the problem. It's one of the key problems. Sickness, it's a financial and social sickness based around debt. That's all. That's all I want to say. We'll have to talk more about this. Because as you can see, I'm starting to rant and I don't want to rant. Okay? Good luck. We talk more.